Welcome back to another episode of the Light of Darkness podcast. I'm your host, Derrick Garza, and I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited. First and foremost, shout out to our sponsor, Darkland Fight Lab. You can find the assortments of goodies, punchings in the facings, and all the submission stuff, darklandfightlab.com. Check us out. Cool. Now that we got the business stuff out of the way, I would like to welcome to the podcast today a very old friend of mine. We go way back, Danny Mulvihill.
Yeah, it's good to be here, man.
Welcome to the podcast. Cool, man. I don't know if you've been watching our podcast or whatever, but we always do this.
Every single episode.
It's a fan. We always do this. We get the guest to kind of give us a little bit of a backstory about who they are, where they're from, the things they believe in, all that good stuff. So run us down, man. Give us a quick rundown of the story of Danny Mulvihill.
Man, I don't know if we got that much time. But
well, I just mean give me the lowdown, man.
Yeah, the low. I guess it makes sense to kind of start with how we met.
Well, tell me a little bit before that.
Then.
Yeah, just kind of what you're about, or if we want to jump into that, we could just jump into that.
And I mean, let's back it up another notch. Grew up in Washington State.
Cool.
Spokane on the east side of Washington. And always, once I kind of was old enough to know a little bit more about what was going on, wanted to leave, wanted to go see more. And the first time I really got the chance to get out of Spokane, I took it. I thought I was moving to Portland.
Portland, Oregon?
Yeah, and Portland's a cool city. I was really excited,
What's the distance from Spokane to Portland?
It's a little under 400 miles, like a 6-hour drive.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. So it's not neighboring
It's a little
cities.
baby step,
Got
but
it.
yeah.
Well, 400 miles
next
is
door.
big for,
Yeah.
I don't know, what were you, teenager or some shit?
No, I think when I moved there, I was probably already 22 or something.
Okay.
Yeah, so I wasn't a baby
seasoned
anymore.
veteran.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Seasoned veteran. Okay, so you wanted to get out of Spokane, Washington. Mm-hmm. And so tell me, where did you end up, man? Or what happened?
Well, so I thought I was moving to Portland, but as it turns out, got moved there and everything and realized I was in Vancouver, Washington.
What?
Yeah, which is just across the river. It's 7 miles from Portland, so
Okay.
it is an easy mistake to make. And
So what's the city? What's the city?
Vancouver, Washington.
Vancouver,
Yeah,
Washington.
not BC.
Okay, but you said 7 miles
From Portland. It's like right across the
Where
river.
was the 400 miles?
Shoot, man. All right.
Are you high?
No.
Okay.
Fortunately, not this time. So Washington State. Spokane's on the east side.
I'm going to get a lot of shit for not knowing geography.
Yeah, man.
I don't fucking know,
disappointing.
man.
All right. So
Not a seasoned veteran.
Portland's in Western Oregon, not quite on the coast or anything. It's about an hour from the coast, and Vancouver, Washington is just across the Columbia River from Portland.
Okay.
Very
Okay.
close, right? I mean, less than 7. It's 7 miles from downtown Portland.
We're getting caught up in the fucking details.
Yeah, it's not important.
Okay.
Anyways, to get back to the point, that was the first time I got out of Spokane. Lived there, maybe 6 years or so.
Okay.
It kind of worked out because I was doing the college thing, and I was a Washington State resident. I did go to community college in Portland a little bit, and just, man, I think I just said I was a Portland resident, so I had to pay out-of-state tuition. But I ended up back up at a college in Washington State, so it turned out to my advantage that I stayed a Washington resident because you get the in-state residency, et cetera, et cetera. Got done with, then I went to Cancun for just like a little solo vacation. Met Posse, my wife. And,
Alexa?
Yes, now formally. Well,
Artist
I won't say
formerly known as
her
Posse.
formerly. No, she's still Posse.
Okay.
I won't say her old name. And then we hooked up. We got married pretty quick. She came to Vancouver. We lived there.
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean pretty quick?
So we met in May 2008, and just like for a couple days, like staying at the same hostel, and I was like, "Yo, what's up?" And managed to we hung out, and I got her to take my email address or something, like that,
Baller.
like old school, right? Yeah, it's probably like Hotmail or Yahoo or something.
The Mac, Return of the Mac.
Right, and then she hit me up a few weeks later. Like, she was on her way from Chile to Truckee, California to hang out with her sister. So we just kind of got to know each other, you know, with that big chunk of distance between us. And then I guess I was dragging my feet a little bit, and she was like, "I'm gonna come visit." And I was like, "Welcome, come."
Well, this is indicative of the way that you guys kind of approach life, right?
Yeah,
they kind of just
spontaneous.
get up and go.
Just try it.
Yeah,
you know.
So, okay, you met Posse. You guys are hanging out and stuff, and so really, I guess, kind of to roundabout, you guys ended up. You said shortly. So, what was the timeline here?
Yeah, so we met May 2008. She came to visit September. I mean, before she even was back in Tahoe or Truckee, I already had bought plane tickets to go visit her again. You know, like 3 weeks later, and you know, I had never even thought about marrying anybody before that, and I didn't even really like in depth think about it with Posse. It like crossed my mind a few times. I was just like, shut up, you fool.
So you're 22.
No, I was at this point. I'd been in Vancouver for a while. I think I was about 26.
Okay.
And so I go down to visit her, and like, you know, the second day I was there, we were staying at this hotel, and we'd been hanging out. And we're like, so what are we gonna do? Like, we like each other's company, you know. We want to hang out and whatnot, and we're just kind of rapping about it, try to figure out what the plan is. And I don't remember it like perfectly, but I think like we've talked about it since, and she's like, I thought maybe you were gonna be like, you should move to Portland and, you know, like get my own place and stuff. And she's like, that sounded cool to me. And I'm like, well, I guess we should like get married.
Why did that cross your mind first?
I think part of it was she was on a 6-month visa. And
she's not from America.
No, she's from Chile. And
just let me just kind of say, so I didn't, again, this is the geography part. I legitimately thought that she was from some village with like, I don't know, hundreds of people.
Yeah,
so,
horse-drawn carriages.
I don't even know, man, just like living in huts and shit. And
you gotta get out, man.
I gotta do something. And so when when I told her that this was what was in the vision in my head, she just laughed at me because it's not the case at all. There's millions of people.
Yeah, Santiago has about 8 million people.
Yeah, so I was a little wrong. I was a little off the mark, but you know, I was close.
No, you weren't.
So anyhow,
but yeah, so I just kind of like blurted out with, I guess we should get married. I think those are my words. And then it felt like an eternity of silence. It was probably only like 10 seconds or so, you know. And somewhere in the midst of that, I was like, oh man, that was fucking lame. You know?
Had you thought about it? It was kind of spontaneous.
Man, it kind of just came out. And so I was like,
was there buyer's remorse as soon as you said it? Or
no, not at all. Well,
ends?
Like the silence was deafening, but I don't think it lasted quite as long as I remember it, you know. And so quickly I kind of like restepped. I was like, I gotta like at least like ask more directly.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know, will you marry me? And she's like, I think she was just in shock, you know. She wasn't expecting that. So finally, she said yes.
Okay.
And we're like, all right, cool, you know. And then just, man, we pieced it together pretty quick. Like, I remember the next day or something, we're like, shit, we got to tell people, you know. This is weird. Like, a lot of people that we knew didn't even really know that we were hanging out or anything, you know.
Did you know the same people?
No, not really. I mean, you
just
know, she came to visit me,
right.
And you know, I came to visit her, and so, you know, we called my mom the next day, and we're like, hey, Mom, you know, she knew I was down there visiting this girl. I'm like, hey, we're gonna get married. Same fucking silence again.
10 seconds before she
I'm just like, and she was just like, oh, you know, and not as enthusiastic as we had hoped. But she eventually came around.
Yeah.
And she was cool. And then, like, I think the day after that, she was staying at her sister's then. And so we went to her sister's house, and we had to tell them, you know, what was up. And I remember we were, like, going to have dinner together, and I was so nervous. I was, like, breaking dishes. I broke, like, 3 plates, you know.
That day?
Yeah, like, as we're preparing dinner. And her sister is just like, what is up with this guy, you know?
I'm on drugs.
And
I'm high.
so, you know, we eat dinner and finally we're like, yeah, so we got something to tell you guys. I don't know, remember if he may interrupted us or if she was like, I think we actually told her like, you know, we're going to get married. And they both, like her and her husband at the time, were like, you guys are pregnant. Or like, how? You know, like, no, that's not what's going on. We're
Well,
just,
it is a typical response.
yeah, exactly,
you know?
right? Like, I had a friend get married recently,
shotgun
and that was
wedding,
my
right?
first thought. I was like, she must be pregnant, you know. But anyways, we got married, and and we got married like 3 weeks after that, right? So like, all right, cool, let's do this.
So you didn't know her very long. You propose, and then you don't really give it time to, you're going to have something grand. You're just like, let's just do this quickly.
Yeah, our idea at the time was like, let's do this, and then like, you know, we'll plan a more formal event.
Yeah.
6 months, a year later. Yeah. And so we just basically threw it together over the phone. Like I had to go back to Vancouver, and just over the phone we planned it out and like pulled it all off, and it ended up being like a really cool wedding. Like we had a good turnout. Like we probably had 40 people there. A lot more of my family than I expected to made it.
They actually like you.
Yeah, I know, right? I was like, good to see y'all. And and we pulled off the whole wedding for like $2,000.
Okay.
Like with the rings. Like we didn't buy fancy rings, obviously. But the whole thing, like the plane tickets and everything, we did an awesome job of keeping it on the cheap. And bam, got married. Here we are.
So shortly after that, did you stay in, you're still in Washington State?
No, I mean, so I flew down there for
Oregon. You were in Oregon.
No, I was in Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, I flew down there for the wedding. We got married, and you know, a few days later, she flew back to Vancouver with me, and we lived together.
Okay. And so I guess fast forward a little bit. I met you in Austin. How did you end up in Austin?
Right. So we got married. She moved to Vancouver. I was finishing up college, so we were there a little over a year. And man, I think I finished in a winter term, so like December I was done. And December, like, we were out again. We were just like sick of Vancouver. It's rainy, not like, we kind of like warmer climates, and we're like, let's get out of here. And so we jetted. We packed up a U-Haul, moved to Reno to just start somewhere new. And I was so naive that I assumed because Reno was more south that it would be more warm. And
It's not, right? I mean,
no,
it's like
because
it's mountainous, right?
Exactly. It's at elevation like 4,000 or so feet. And so we left Washington. It wasn't nice or anything, but it wasn't damn cold. And we got to Reno, and there was like a foot of snow on the ground. I was like,
okay,
damn it, you know. But whatever. It was mostly just about going somewhere new too. And her sister had just had a daughter semi recently. You know, she was a little over a year old, and so we kind of wanted to like be there while she was a kid and get to know her. And then we kicked it in Reno for a while, hustled, worked, and after about 9 months of being there, even less, like we just still didn't really like anything about it.
Yeah.
And so we're like, and we both kind of hated our jobs, and I had a falling out with some things at work, and I was just like, oh, I hate this place.
You had already finished school at this point?
Yeah, I was done with school.
And so were you doing the profession that you're doing now at that time?
Yeah, I was doing software development.
Okay.
Yeah, so
so
it's like my first...
Danny makes shit on computers.
Yes, web applications.
Yeah. So you were there, did not work out, and so why did you move here?
Why Austin? So while we still lived in Washington, we kind of stumbled across, I think I was at work or school one day, and she was just like Netflixing and, you know, watched like some, I think it was, you know, Morgan Spurlock. He made the movie Super Size Me.
Yeah, he does like a documentary series.
Yeah, and he did this like TV show where it's like 30 days of something, right? And he did one about veganism. And I get home and Posse's like, I'm vegan.
Just like that. Just like that.
Like straight. I was like,
did you know anything about it before that?
I mean, we were actually vegetarian up until that point, and so you know, we obviously knew what it entailed.
Right.
Is just restricting a few extra things, and I was like, whatever, all right, I'm down. Let's try it. And then I think I watched it with her. I was like, oh, me too.
Yeah.
And so when in Reno at that point, this was 8-9 years ago, it was not vegan friendly, and so we wanted to go somewhere where we could like actually go out and have dinner together, and it wasn't just like lame ass boring iceberg lettuce salad. And I think we probably looked at a list of like cool cities for that, and Austin was near the top, and it sounded like a cool city, and neither one of us had been there, and that sounded fun, and so we're like, all right, in 2 months we're out.
Okay.
And I went back into work on Monday and was like, yeah, okay, I'll stick around a little bit longer.
Knowing
Full well I
that
was
you were
out in
not
60
going
days,
to.
yeah.
So you end up in Austin, and how long? I mean, so you were in Austin for a bit. When I met you, I'm gonna interject myself into this story.
Please
because
do.
I need to be interwoven with you. But when I met you, I think I had just moved to Austin, maybe 2011, and
Sounds
so
about
it was
right.
2011 or 2012, and Danny happened to, without me knowing, be my neighbor. Literally, our walkway was,
We share the same stairwell.
10 feet or something like so, and I didn't know. I didn't know anybody when I moved here. And so one day, taking out the trash, and I'm wearing a jiu-jitsu shirt because, you gotta that's what it is. And so I'm wearing a jiu-jitsu shirt, and this guy behind me is like, hey, you do jiu-jitsu? And I didn't know this guy, and I'm like, yeah, I do jiu-jitsu. And he's like, oh, that's cool, man. I want to do jiu-jitsu. And, in this sport or art, you definitely run across a lot of people that talk about, if you're not in the gym and they see you out, they either have fought or want to fight or they're interested.
Yeah.
And so you just never know who's really about it. So, being friendly as I can without knowing the guy, I was like, I don't know who you are. I don't know anything about you. He's like, I want to do jiu-jitsu. Cool. And then he's like, I'm your neighbor. I will show up to your place. And I was like, okay. I didn't think that was actually going to happen. I was like, nobody talks to each other, and I haven't been in Austin very long, so I don't know the culture. I think like a couple of days later, it might have literally been like the next day.
Yeah, I don't recall.
There's a knock on my door about 5 p.m. I'm about to leave, and the girl that I'm dating at the time comes and like, hey, it's the guy from across the street or across the hallway. And I'm like, oh, yeah, bring him in. He's like, cool, man, I'm ready to trade. I was like, oh, he actually came. He actually came.
Yeah.
And so I'm a brown belt at the time, and I'm like, all right, cool. So I don't know this guy. I don't know anything about you. All I know is like he's a skinny white kid who, for all I know, you could have been addicted to meth and want to try to rob me. And
I hope it would have been a little more clear that wasn't the case, but
No, I was very confused. And so he's like, yeah, let's go. So I'm like, all right, cool, man. So we get in the car, and again, I'm pretty friendly, but also I usually have some context to know people that I'm around. And so I don't know anything about you. And then you're all sitting in my car, and we're like, all right, man, cool. Like, what music are we listening to? I don't know. I don't even think I remember your name.
I didn't realize you fretted so much about
well,
this.
I was just like, I don't know what's going on here. So we get to the gym, and you tell me even before that your brother had trained or whatnot.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, man. So we train, and it's all good. And you go release a lot of stress pretty much through jiu-jitsu, and while you're doing it, you always make friendships because of the thing that you're doing. And so, at the end of the day, man, literally quite at the end of the day, like, I mean, he's my homie, or he's my friend. And so, this kind of came about where we would just kind of train every now and again, for a while, and we would, started kind of hanging out with each other. Him and his wife would have me over for dinner, make vegan shit. And up until this point, I didn't really know anything about it, so it's kind of a new thing to me. People with like more restrictive diets, what they can and can't eat. And veganism just never really crossed my mind. So, you hear vegetarianism or being vegetarians, and you think in your head, if you're not really hip to it, oh, it's just a life of salads and vegetables.
Yeah.
And, veganism is like a step further, where you don't...
It's extreme. It's like an extreme.
Right. You don't
diet.
partake in the use of any animal product, that be any fluid, anything with their skin, their meat especially, anything that's cruel to a living organism, a sentient being, you don't partake in.
Yeah, that's
and
the
so
idea.
him and his wife would have me over, and I just wouldn't know what to expect. I was like, yeah, sure, we can definitely eat. But then I was like, what are you going to possibly make that's going to be good
Yeah.
that I'm going to enjoy? And so it was very surprising to have, his wife is a really good cook, and you cook also, and
bit.
you guys would make some things that were very creative, and I would always be surprised. It was just like, you guys did something special. And so it was just kind of my first experience with somebody who had a different diet than mine.
Yeah.
And so you guys were vegan for a while, but we'll get to that in just a second. But I guess essentially you were here for a while, and we get to talking and stuff. And Danny and Posse both have kind of, I wouldn't say, they're just more unconventional thoughts about a lot of things. Be it the way that we approach work, or there was a time, I guess, where we talked about vaccinations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you guys came up. So all of a sudden I don't know anybody in this new town, but then I meet these guys, and they end up being really close friends to me. And throughout the conversations, I started kind of getting rumblings that we might move, just to move and go to a different country or some shit like that.
That's right. Yep.
And so, I'm like, the time's not going to happen. But I think at this point, Posse is pregnant with your first baby?
No, I think she was pregnant when we lived in the apartment right by
Yes.
you. And then Amaya was born while we lived there. And then we moved to that other spot in South Austin before we left.
Correct. But you had already started talking about how you are probably going to only be in Austin for a little bit longer, I think. And,
Really? We already knew by then?
I think so.
Wow.
I think we talked about this, at least that I remember.
Yeah.
Where you guys were like, we just want to see some different things.
Yeah.
And so, that kind of came about. And tell me a little bit about, I guess, your thoughts on that, like just not being set in one space for too long.
Yeah. So really what the deal is we met traveling, which turns out to have been really fortunate because it sort of set the stage for the rest of our relationship, where we were both open to going to new places. We like to travel. We met doing it. And so it was always a goal, that we wanted to go travel more, like seriously. And so that's why we left Austin, is we started we're like, okay, we got to do this. I think we came across like an old notebook, and like we were looking at goals, and we're like, oh, we did that one. We did that one. We did that one. Oh, we haven't done that one yet. We're like, all right. And so we just got serious, started saving up money, and then we didn't know how long we were going to be gone. We were perfectly open to the possibility of never coming back.
Yeah.
So before we did that, we were like, well, we better go, visit the family up in Washington. Bring Amaya up there to meet a few people that she might never see again if we don't go back.
Well,
So,
what was the plan to move to just somewhere other than a major city in America?
We knew we were going to go to South America, so the plan was to kind of
she's from
she's from Chile, and so the plan was to just do the whole continent. We were probably going to try to arrive in Colombia, and then just go Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Argentina, Brazil. Probably skip those three up in the north of Brazil, but we were going to kind of just check out the whole spot, And as it turns out, we went to Spokane, got everything together, got the tickets, got the date planned. And man, it's so funny looking back, how much we planned it, because we were backpacking that trip, and we had Amaya, who was...
So you were backpacking the Spokane trip?
No. From when we finally went to South America.
So you go to Spokane first. I just want to make sure I get the timeline.
We went back
right.
there like a couple months or something.
Okay, just to save up money and stuff?
Yeah, that was part of it too. Like we were staying at my mom's, so we could save a little bit of extra money, visit, and just kind of get everything ready to go.
So when you decided that you guys were going, you picked a date, this is the time that you guys are going to go. And so what was the plan? Arrive in the first city of?
So the first place we arrived was Quito, Ecuador.
Okay, so Ecuador.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get there, are you guys thinking, okay, we're going to rent a car, we're staying in a place? What was the plan, and how did that come about? Because you said traveling, but also...
but we had our daughter who was, Amaya she's probably about 2, I think, when we did that trip. So she would, she wasn't like a helpless infant, but she was
still
still
a
a
toddler,
you
yeah.
know. So the plan and the execution of the plan was just Airbnbs basically. So we rented the first one or two from the States. We researched it online, picked one in Quito, so that it was just ready when we arrived. And then that's what we did. Like all throughout Ecuador, it was almost entirely Airbnb. And we found one spot in the city called Cuenca where we couldn't find anything good online, so we just like showed up, grabbed a hotel or something, and like walked through. And fortunately, since she's fluent in Spanish, obviously she could like call people and and kind of get the not foreigner deal.
Sure.
So we were able to get a place there, and that was the plan. And we ended up meeting up with one of our friends in Mancura, Peru. It's like this beach town in North Peru. And then after that, it had been about 3 months of travel, just like a week or two at every
At
different
each place?
place. Yeah, and we were kind of just tired of it. So by the time we got to Lima, we're like, all right, let's chill. We rented like a kind of a nice apartment for, I don't remember if it was 3 months or if I don't know, maybe we did a month-to-month deal with the guy, but we stayed there 3 months.
So, if you kind of take a look at like doing Airbnb in the States, it can be pretty expensive.
Yeah.
How did you guys manage that when you're there? Is it a different, exchange, or is
No.
it still really expensive?
It's still pretty expensive.
Yep.
It's less, than it would be to rent a place in Austin, for example.
Sure.
Because the cost of living in general is a little bit lower, but it's not like dirt cheap, Like I remember going into the plan, like we'd look up like the cost of living in these other countries. We're like, wow, the average person pays $200 in rent, but the average person doesn't live in like the type of structure that we're used to, and so you end
for
up
better or
paying,
for worse.
Yeah, for worse. Like just poorly made structures. There's far less building codes and things like that. So the plan. I lost my train of thought.
Well, we were talking about the renting
cost.
renting the Airbnbs.
Right. So a couple things. The cost was manageable, and I worked remotely. So that's how we were able to sort of do it. Like we didn't have to save up a bunch of money. Although if you're thinking about doing it, I recommend that approach because
Saving up money
and then stop working and then going to travel. Because otherwise, you're just
working
on
on location.
Like, I basically just had a normal life in a different country rather than like a cool, fun traveling experience.
You had an Americanized life.
Yeah.
Basically, on another continent.
Yeah.
And so, what is that like? I mean, are you able to dive into the culture there because you're kind of tethered to what
a
you
lot
would
less than
normally
I
do?
would have liked, for sure. The other challenge for really diving into the culture, as you put it, is that because Posse can speak Spanish, and I was just being a bit of a baby about things. Like I never really practiced.
Were you
were you
resistant to it?
No, I was really excited, but I was naive, and I thought that if I just got down there, I would absorb the language, and it's not how it works. You have to like sound kind of like a dummy for a while, and I was just, I guess, too insecure to do that the first couple times we went, and so that prevented diving into the culture a lot. But it was a lot more of a culture dive than just staying back at home, and then the other thing, like I thought, I'll get to practice Spanish a lot with jiu-jitsu. But man, almost every country I've been to, like if there's one place where they speak English, it's the jiu-jitsu gym.
Is it?
Like there's always at least one guy there who's fluent, pretty much.
Yeah. So it's just like going to a normal academy here.
It's a little different, but it's not as different as one would expect, know.
So very familiar.
Definitely, yeah. Jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. So,
well, I think that's why a lot of people get along because no matter where you go, it's going to be very similar to what you're used to. No matter what, whether it's with the gi, without the gi, it's MMA. It's kind of the same culture.
Totally.
Okay, so you are in these different Airbnbs, and really, I just want to ask, like, did you ever run across anything where you're like, "Fuck, this is not a good place to stay"? Any cities that because South America in general, if you think about from, I guess, an American's perspective, we may be naive because we're not there, but, you know,
All right.
it seems like there'd be a lot of dangerous places, especially for a white dude.
Yeah, nah. So two things. We obviously encountered a little bit of that resistance from family, you know, but I guess this was like this first time they were still kind of getting used to us doing whatever we wanted and whatnot. And my mom's always supported me almost to a fault. You know, like anything I want to do, my mom's like, great idea.
You're the
You know,
one.
super supportive. And so we didn't get too much pushback from her. She was a little afraid, but I was like, Mom, there's places in Spokane, Washington that you don't want to be. I'm
Sure.
like, you watch the news every day. How many people died yesterday? Guess
That's a
what?
great argument to
Don't
give your
go to
mom.
those areas in Spokane, you know,
Yeah.
like, and I'm not going to go to those areas in these other cities, and I'm going to be fine. And so you avoid, you know, bad areas,
Sure.
and you're fine there. But Moncura, there was a little bit. It was a little shady.
Where's this?
Peru. It's
Okay.
a little beach town. I really like that place, but it's a small town, and so you can kind of get to know everybody pretty quick. It kind of worked out that we just kind of became tight with the right people, and I think that may have shielded us from a little bit of the sketchiness. Like Posse's like best friends, Negra, met us in Moncura, and somewhere along the way, it's like she was single and she's an attractive woman, and some guy there named, everybody called him Gato, and she met him. She got there a few days before us. Turns out like he's a jiu-jitsu guy.
Oh.
And so she's like, oh, my friend's coming and like he'll be so stoked. And I met with that guy and he seemed cool, and he had like a little like palapa behind his house, like, you know, no walls, just a straw roof and jiu-jitsu mats. I was like, amazing. Yes, I was so excited. He's like, yeah, come back later. And I show up and like nobody's there. I was like, oh, that was weird, right? That guy ended up kind of being like stalking Negra the whole time, like being hella weird, and he was like a pretty tough guy, you know, like, so you couldn't just like tell him to buzz off. Like he's kind of a gangster. And so that was a little shady. And then, but luckily, so then we ended up moving to this other hostel, and like, I think a lot of the guys who ran that place were like kind of moving all the drugs in town.
Okay.
But like, we were all cool. Negra's super friendly. Like everybody likes her, and like her and Posse together as a team, like they get along with people. And so we just ended up being tight, and there was actually jiu-jitsu at that hostel. And man, I wish I could remember this guy's name because he was cool. He was a cool instructor. I really liked his classes.
I feel like there was an actual like academy there.
Not an academy. It was more like another like no walls, straw roof, jiu-jitsu mats.
Okay.
And it was like they had kickboxing on one side and jiu-jitsu on the
So
other.
these guys are just doing it just because they want to.
Just for fun, you know. Like I don't think he was really
getting paid or
charging
anything.
much, you know. Like I kicked him down money because I was making money, and I was like, bro, please, I'm stoked to be here. But that guy's a badass, you know. And like we kind of became tight with them, and I feel like that shielded us from a lot of the sketchy shit that was going on because people knew that they were not people to mess with.
Right.
And we didn't even know this until later. Like we left Moncor a few weeks later. We were in Lima. Negra stayed behind, ended up dating this other Argentinian guy that lived there. And then they left and met us in Lima. And then one day I'm like hanging out talking to her boyfriend at the time, like on the balcony, and getting into all the details about how crazy all these people are. And there was like a drive-by shooting like at this other hostel where we stayed for a few days, just a week or two after we were left. And he was telling me
they
how
were connected to these people.
it seemed like there was some drug war stuff kind of going on.
Okay.
You know, like kind of low level stuff, not like cartel type stuff.
narcos,
You know, just like
and shit.
just some local gangsters, you know, causing trouble. So that was the only time we were ever even, and we didn't even know it while we were there. That was the only real trouble we encountered, and so really, I wouldn't be afraid to go back anywhere
Okay.
like that. You know,
Even
it's-
without posse.
No, it'd be fine.
Okay.
If
okay.
anything, you know, like it's a lot easier to protect just myself than like my family also.
Right.
You know, like
So you
I
have-
can run if I have to, but not when my wife's there.
Right. So you have your wife, your daughter, who is around 2
About
years old,
2.5-ish.
and you guys are just kind of every few weeks, I guess.
Yeah,
you
every
guys just
week or
moving
two,
around?
we were just moving to a new spot.
And what would dictate it's just time to move?
I don't recall. I think we were just kind of on a speedy schedule and wanting to check out new places, and maybe we'd rent a place for maybe on Airbnb is only available for 3 days.
Sure.
We'd get it, and then we're like, all right,
So
well,
some availability, and then just kind
partly
of
that, and just
a feel.
yeah, just kind of move when it felt right.
Yeah, and there was a lot of how that went about. Just what you got, where you guys were at mentally, I guess. It's like,
Yeah.
let's do this. Okay, so you end up in Ecuador,
No,
Peru.
yes, Lima is where we ended up, and we stayed 3 months there.
Okay, so the whole trek after the moving around and stuff in South America, how long were you guys there total?
The first time we were there 6 months, like almost to the day,
Okay,
and so I was working remotely and
for a company based in Austin.
based in Austin, actually, yeah. And when I became a remote worker, I transitioned to a contract basis, which was rad at first because the money was sick. But
Is this
then-
something that you basically said you just went to the bosses and were like, hey, I'd like to not come into the office?
Yeah, pretty much. So I was doing all the technical recruiting and like tech interviews, you know, trying to sort of filter candidates to put them in front of the people who would actually hire them. And we're having really hard time hiring people, you know, like, and one day it just hit me. I was like, well, I'm awesome at this shit. Why would, like, I'm sure they would just, if I want to go, they'll probably be like, okay, you know, because we needed employees, we
Sure.
needed engineers, couldn't find them.
So you waited to have their balls in a vice.
I just discovered one day that that's where they were.
Oh, okay.
And
just
it's like,
overlooked. Okay. Hey,
and
I'm
so
going
I
to point
just,
this out to you guys.
yeah. And my boss, like my immediate boss at the time, Eric, was really cool. Still probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. And I presented to him. I was like, hey, man, I'm thinking about, you know, I'd like to work remote. Like, would you guys be down with that? And pretty quick, he was like, yeah, I think we could probably make it work, you know? And so yeah, then we were able to transition that. That's what helped started getting us ready to leave Austin.
Yeah.
Because I had to kind of get that part dialed in first. And so then we're in Lima, and the work was kind of drying up a little bit. And because it was contract basis, you know, there was, if they had in-house engineers, they're more like they're already paying them salary, you know. And so I was getting a little bit less work, and
So you were hiring people as a web developer?
more like web application developers.
And your job was to interview people to do what?
Well, that was just a role that I played. Like my real job was to build stuff as an engineer, like web stuff. And so I would just, you know, that was just part of what I was doing. I'd find candidates, I'd post the job listings, you know, look at the resumes,
Sure.
call them, try to get a feel if they actually knew what they were talking about, that kind of thing. And that's what I was doing.
Right on. So you tell your boss that you're leaving, you get to leave, all that good stuff.
Thumbs up.
And so you're basically just working on the road.
Yeah.
So you have to have access to the internet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Is there any, like, was it all major cities that you were in, or were you
It
in ever small
was.
towns where it's a little more spotty?
We would pass through some small towns, but for the most part, we were usually in large cities.
Sure.
And definitely, if we were in a small city, it was just for a couple of days, and we would plan it accordingly.
Yeah.
But the infrastructure in a lot of those towns, even like large cities of, say, a couple 100,000 people, they can have poor infrastructure. Like it rains and the power goes out.
Okay.
Or the wind blows and the internet stops working.
So this is a common thing?
It was in my experience, yeah.
Yeah. And you had to deal with it a lot?
Yeah, it was frustrating. And that was also, I think, part of why when we got to Lima, we're like, we're going to get an apartment with a good internet connection, you know?
Yeah.
And we got that. And then I had a little bit less work to do. I was already kind of thinking I wanted to do some work for a different company maybe anyway. And so I started sending out resumes, and then I talked to people, and they were like, yeah, everything's good, you know? And I was holding it. I was like, oh, by the way, I'm in Peru right now. And they'd be like, what?
They knew you were going to do some traveling, though, right?
Yeah, and for some reason that was really like turning people off. Like they weren't like, they were open. I was only applying to remote positions, but as soon as they found out I was like remote, they kind of would back off a little bit.
So while you were looking for other jobs,
Yeah.
you were having resistance.
Yeah, a little bit. And we were kind of getting, I guess, bored and whatnot with being in a third world country, you know?
So this wasn't a permanent plan when you guys were talking about this initially.
Initially, we were like, maybe we'll go live there forever. And then as it panned out, we just kind of like, we ended up in a spot and we kind of were losing. It wasn't as much fun anymore. And also we were kind of like having to make sure that, we could maintain an income. And since I wasn't able to, at that time, I don't know, 3-4 years into being a professional developer. And so it'd be a lot easier for me to get work remotely.
Well, it's probably a little more par for the course, right?
Yeah,
Just people work remotely,
and companies are more comfortable with it.
In this industry.
Yeah, but anyways, we're there, and so we're kind of like, maybe we should go back to the States, take a break from traveling. And so every once in a while, Posse would just be like looking online for like tickets, to just different cities. And one day she texted me, it's just like, I found tickets direct to Miami for $200. I was like, buy them, And I think like 2 weeks later, we flew into Fort Lauderdale.
So you didn't you had an apartment at this time?
Yeah.
Was it pretty much just a month-to-month thing? You just kind of let them know?
It must have been, because like the guy was an attorney and he was kind of a jerk, so he wouldn't have let us out if it must have been a month-to-month setup. And I think and I was just paying him in cash, which was annoying, and so I think we're like, hey, we're leaving,
Yeah.
And what you gonna do about it? Like, take me to Lima court?
Yeah, I'm gone.
Later, bro. And I think he didn't really obviously pursue it, and I think we're within our bounds to do that. Maybe we would give him a little more notice. And we just flew to Fort Lauderdale, rented a car, and just started driving around to different cities looking for a place to live.
So while you were in Florida, you guys are deciding that you're going to stay in Florida, or just kind of...
Yeah. We're like, okay, let's find a place to live in Florida. And from Lima, once we knew we were going to Florida, we started looking on Zillow at places to live and price of homes. And same problem. You're like, oh, wow, $75,000. That's cheap. And then, then we finally get to the city and we drive through the neighborhood. We're like, oh,
this is why it's 75,000.
Yeah. But we ended up in West Palm Beach, which is a really cool little city. We found an awesome neighborhood. Like our first night there, they do this thing every Thursday night, year rounds, called, I don't know, it's on Clematis Street, which we always thought was a funny name. But it's in the park. It's a big, cool park. They do live bands, tons of people. Cool environment, We met some people that night with other kids, similar age to Amaya, and they're like, yeah, we just live a mile that way in this neighborhood called Old Northwood. And
so what was the event? Just like
it was
a festival?
weekly Thursday night event, and we just happened to show up on a Thursday when it was happening.
I just imagine you wearing Hawaiian shirts and in Florida. I don't know, man. I don't know. I have an active imagination.
Apparently.
So you guys are now in Florida, and so all this time, you're managing work, you're raising a toddler,
yeah,
you're keeping your marriage together good,
oh yeah,
and also living the vegan life.
Yeah, we were vegan.
Okay, so
at that point.
How long did you end up staying in Florida?
6 months, to the dot again.
So is there any rhyme and reason? It's just the same thing, just kind of we're gonna just see how it goes, and then we're not married to this idea.
We were there, and so when we got back to Florida, I ended up going back to full time for the same company in Austin.
Sure.
So I had more stable, regular, legit income, and then, but this Old Northwood neighborhood was it was funny, there could be our house that we rented, which wasn't a shithole or anything. It was kind of a cool little house. It was really old, but it was well maintained for the most part. But then across the street would be super nice house that's, $700,000 or something. And this was, 5 years ago. I'm sure the houses there even more now. And then the next block over, there's $1 million houses. It's just a weird, and then 2 blocks that way are super nice houses.
So it's like Austin.
Probably, yeah.
Well, there a lot of the neighborhoods are just
right.
The prices are going up
crazy.
But you can have a brand new house, and then right next door is the old neighborhood house where it's falling apart.
Yeah.
You have a contrast in the architectural styles, the people that live there. So it's just a very interesting time where this was a very affordable place. Now it's just kind of the popularity of it, the demand for space here has really driven up the price.
No doubt. Yeah.
So I'm sure but I'm sure that's kind of how it is in a lot of cities across the country. Inflation is a real thing.
I mean, and one thing that has occurred to us is that almost anywhere that is really cool, other people have figured it out.
Yeah,
Like, it's
I mean,
cool because a bunch of cool people figured out it was cool and started moving there. And so,
where are you going to live on planet Earth that people don't know about? That's
well, like there's always those kind
habitable.
of like undiscovered gems, like kind of on their way up. Probably in the '90s, or maybe even before then, like Austin kind of might have been one of those places where like things are happening. It's kind of cool, but you could
definitely.
like still show up and buy a home. But what happened to us in Florida was like we met tons of like we became really good friends with those people we met the first night we were there. They ended up living like on like there's an alley between us, and they were just like right over there. And the old Northwood had like an association. They'd have like everybody, like different house would throw parties and like everybody is friends. It was fucking great. Best Halloween I've ever had in my life was there because it was like super warm and like everybody was cool. Like they're doing parties and stuff. It was really fun. But then we started being like, man, like we have the same job, but how do you have so much more money than me? Like
Cocaine.
no, I think I don't know what it was. If it was like old money, like family money, but like we would like do our budget, and we're like, that's not adding up, And we're like, we were, I guess, kind of trying to keep up with the Joneses a little bit, and we were still frugal back then, but it wasn't working out. And we were like, dude, screw this, And my grandpa was getting real sick, and we're like, I think we use that as a bit of an excuse, to throw in the towel in Florida a little bit. And so we just like our landlord, the woman who managed the property we rented, she was really cool. We were friends with her too. Like she babysat our kids. She was probably the first person that we let babysit Amaya that we didn't actually like know. She was that cool.
Seems like a good move.
And so we just told her like, hey, it's not working out. My grandpa's getting super old. We're gonna jet back, and she helped navigate us out of the lease.
Sure.
And we had put a bunch of money into the house, like we made it a lot nicer than it was. So she was cool. She helped us out. We got out of there. We jetted back to Spokane, and we stayed in Spokane almost 7 months that time. Posse went to college a little bit, and then she got pregnant with Kylie. And at that point, we were staying with my brother, who is in a condo in Spokane. It's like a 2-bedroom, and we had like the big bedroom. And with me, Posse, and Amaya, and then she was pregnant. We're like, all right, we can't live with my bro. Like, love him, but we can't have an entire family here with him. It's not fair to him. It's not going to be great for us. Blah blah blah. And we started looking around for even just an apartment, that we could rent and be comfortable. And we're like, dude, screw this. Like, it's so expensive. Like, we don't really even really love Spokane. We weren't about to spend the kind of money on the price of apartments. We're like, we could just go to lots of other cool places if we're going to spend that kind of money. And then we're like, well, let's go to Chile.
So now you're going back to
South America. And so once again, real quick, I think it was probably a 2 or 3 month window. We're like, all right, let's go. Bought tickets, got it together. This time we weren't going to backpack though. We were going to like go there, find a spot, live there, maybe even try to like buy land and build a home or something, right?
So you guys were in it to win it.
Yeah, again, so but with less travel, more trying to find like a chunk of property and live there. And we get there, and man, the first.
Is this the first time you had been there?
To Chile, yeah.
Yeah.
And the first time that.
What's your impression right off the jump?
I think I was really excited at that point. Like I'm trying not to cloud it with my current view and opinion of Chile. I think I was just really excited to be there. So, and it's a big city. I knew there was tons of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So I was excited when we first got there.
First got there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, so we paid for a month for an Airbnb again, like to arrive. Or like we just wanted to arrive, have time to chill, really like check out the areas and see where we want to live. And man, that was one of the worst places we've ever rented. Like
That spot in particular?
That particular apartment.
Okay.
Like the area was pretty cool, but the apartment was gross. Like like the bathroom smelled like somebody just peed on the wall every day for 10 years, and the kitchen was like, when like you I think like cook a lot of meat, like you kind of get this like greasy film,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The whole kitchen was just like you'd like grab a cupboard and just like, ugh.
So just
Like, it's
just
disgusting.
covered, layered.
Yeah, and and so we're trying to like we're trying to be fancy. We're like trying to hire housekeepers, and Alex is asking around, Posse's asking around, all kinds of people, and like we like made agreements with like 3 different. Nobody would show up to clean the place. Finally, one day, like she gets home from doing something, and I'm like scrubbing it. I've got gloves and everything, and I'm like, I can't do it anymore. And so that kind of put a bad taste in our mouth. But then we found a different spot on Craigslist, and went and checked that out, and it was amazing apartment, like U.S. standards. They had fiber internet. It was really, really cool, and it was an American dude that was renting it from a different American who bought the condo, and then her and her Chilean husband moved back to Philadelphia or something. So we're like, yeah, we love it. He's like, cool, I'm almost done here. I'm moving out in like a month, and so we're like, yeah. We took over that spot, and it was pretty cool. It was a nice spot. It was in a pretty cool area. Not the super like fancy people area, but like still a cool spot. I think it's called Nuñoa. And but once again, after a while, we were just like, I think like it's still a third world country. It's modern and westernized, and like there's infrastructure and the subway and everything, but it's still like
Not America.
It's not America. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's different and not in always in good ways.
Sure.
So we came back again.
So throughout all this time, are you ever, I don't know, man, do you ever go, well, that was a dumb idea? Or are you just like, experiences, man? These are great.
Yeah,
These are
exactly.
great things.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of the point of view with all of this stuff is just like, well, we're going to try it, and no blood, no harm, no foul.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's about, I don't know where I first encountered the idea of like, I don't ever want to be an old person. You reach a point in your life where you got less time left than you've already lived.
Well, right. I mean, that is true.
But
But even
for everybody all the time.
right.
But you're like, I might have a good 15 years left. I mean, even with that, like, there's a lot of shit that you can't accomplish in 15 years and can't do, especially when you're reaching old age and if you're having health issues. And I just never wanted to be there and be like, oh my God, I can't believe I spent my whole life in Spokane. For me, I didn't want that.
Sure.
And so to your point, no, it's never have we regretted like, oh man, we shouldn't have gone to South America. Like, I'm so thankful for every city we've moved to or lived in and left.
So while we're doing this, and I really want to just kind of, I don't know how to segue this the best way, but so we talked about you and your wife both being vegans, right? Mm-hmm. And different countries. Was that ever a challenge?
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge, and you know what? Maybe we'll get into the regret in a minute, but we missed out on a lot of food because of that.
Sure.
Like there's Peru especially is really known for having like some top chefs. Like they do creative food. They do some crazy food, and we just like didn't eat any of it.
So even to go back even a little further, because I don't think we actually talked about this. You guys were vegetarian just for health reasons, or was it ethical?
I think it started out for me. It was mostly like a health, kind of a selfish thing, and then especially as we transitioned to vegan, it became more of an ethically influenced decision and ongoing choice. I think it was always a bit ethical for Posse. Like she first was vegetarian when she was 16 or so.
So independently from you.
Yeah, and I had experimented with it a little bit, before we had met, and so yeah, that's why it was. Once you become, I think the only way to be vegan is it's so restrictive that there's almost got to be some ethical component.
Sure.
But a lot of people do it for purely health reasons to their, to their detriment. I think.
Well, I don't know. The argument is for people that do it number one, obviously animals don't suffer. But
Yeah.
then on the other end of it is everybody says when they're vegan, or a lot of people say that you can get everything nutrient wise that you can get with animals and animal protein with some alternative. And so I haven't looked in it enough to argue on either side. I mean, I see validity in both. Obviously, if you're an animal lover or if you believe in sentient beings having their own
Yeah.
universal rights, well, then, yes, you are murdering something, killing something. But then if you look on the other side, man, there's a lot of people that like are Bible thumpers, whatever, but that are like, animals are here and mankind is at the top of the food chain or top of the chain
Yeah.
or whatever. So you can look at it a couple of different ways and not say, any one group is right or wrong, but that's just the facts of it. There's people on both sides of it. And so, everybody at the end of the day is able to make their choice, whether they're going to partake in that or not.
Yeah.
So, that being said, you guys you missed out, so to speak, on a lot of local cuisine that involved animals.
Yeah.
And so, you guys, all in all, were living this lifestyle for.
Well, let's finish the vegan
Please.
topic because I think there's a lot in there.
Okay.
I'll try to address a few of your points. So, the argument that you can get all the nutrition you need
Sure.
from purely plant-based foods, I can't disagree completely. From a macronutrient level, like you can get enough protein and vitamins and minerals and carbohydrates and the things that we sort of understand on a high level we need to function, right? But what started happening, and the other thing I wanted to say is,
But you can also supplement too.
yeah, I've never been a fan of supplements. It always seemed to me like if you can't get what you need from your food, then you might be doing something wrong. I've never been a big fan of supplements. We take a couple now, but the other point was that, like, we were never preachy, annoying
Sure.
vegans. Like I would pride myself on people not knowing it for months. I would try to not make a big deal out of it because
Sure.
I believed in it at the time, and I figured if I believe in it, then that would suggest that I want other people to perhaps live the same lifestyle. And it always seemed to me like the best way to do that would be to let people get to know me and understand that I'm a normal, nice, functional, smart person, and then discover on their own, but you'd eat that way, and be like, and then maybe they wouldn't be so annoyed by it.
Sure.
I think that's also part of why so many people get turned off from it, and because there's a lot of people that are really annoying about it, and that just bugs people. It doesn't convince anybody. The other thing is a lot of people, they'll be having some health problems and they'll switch to a new diet. Maybe it's vegan, maybe it's paleo, maybe it's keto, similar to paleo. It could be a number of different things, right? The reason I think it works in almost every case is that if you're eating kind of crappy processed food and then you switch to a more restrictive diet, you not only do you remove, typically almost any diet that makes sense removes processed food. Like that's the common thread
sugar,
in all of them, right?
Salt.
Stuff that comes in boxes and plastic and packaged that's been, refined and removed from its natural form and then recomposed back together with, maybe some fiber and various things removed. When you stop consuming that stuff and switch to something different, it's probably going to have an effect, especially if you were eating it to the point that it was causing you problems. Yeah, you switch, you're probably going to see a positive improvement. And so I think that's why it works for a lot of people. And, when you see that working in your life, you're like, maybe I'm having a particular problem, and then I switch. It's like that proof, and that's what gets people excited. But
there's something to be said about that. You know what I mean? If you switch it and it's working for you,
yeah,
why not?
Right. And so why we eventually stopped doing it or stopped eating that way was you can sort of like ignore a lot of things, you know, like you adopt this belief system, you think, this is healthy, I'm doing what's right for my body. And, you know, honestly, we did avoid a lot of bad foods, you know, like we skipped a lot of foods because we were so restrictive. But we started having like issues, you know, like personally, like I was just having digestive problems, like, and I just had ignored it for so long, it just almost became my normal. And then Posse was having headaches a lot, like she would just, and we're like, you know, that would happen and we just like clean it up, like eating really, really good, you know, not just like junk food vegan, like good, organic, well sourced food. And it just wasn't working. She would be tired. And the more so she started looking for solutions, you know, like, okay, why am I tired? We believe that diet is a big part of the way we feel. So she'd look it up and it just seemed to her like every time she looked it up, the solution that a lot of people were suggesting was animal foods.
Interesting.
Like the things that we had been avoiding a lot, like just meat in general, liver specifically, a lot of the oils that come in animals. And then I think we got this book called Ketotarian that is it's a perfect way to switch people off vegan or vegetarian because it introduces fish and it does it real slow. And we're like, well, I guess let's try it. And we like bought some, you know, really good
So
wild caught salmon.
this was a conversation you guys had.
Yeah, we just were like trying to do new things, and I think we were both we started eating eggs like 6 months before we got the Ketotarian book. So we were already like, maybe we got to mess with the animal foods a little bit, and but then we started eating. We started with fish, and I remember the first night we ate it, we both had like a little piece, and it was the most like satisfied I felt after eating a meal in years. Like before, like when I would eat just plant-based foods, you know, you can eat a lot, but you'd feel just more like full. Like I didn't feel like stuffed. I just felt like
Satiated.
yeah, exactly. And so then from there we just started adding more and more, trying more foods, and then within a short time span, we're like, yeah, we're done. And then Posse started finding these videos of like people who used to be vegan, and even people who like developed entire brands and like successful money making social media accounts where their whole identity was based on being vegan, and they started having health problems of various sorts. And there seemed to be a similar thread amongst a lot of them, like digestive problems, dental problems. A lot of people were having, and so and then they're like, and then I stopped. You know, I slowly stopped eating that way. I started adding some animal products, and same thing. They switched, and everything got better. You know,
Sure.
So that's how we got to where we are today.
So I have been dating a lady who has been pretty hardcore vegan.
Yeah,
And I
I
think
know.
she has been vegetarian since she was 12. I think she has
Okay.
been full vegan for maybe the past 8 or 9 years. And so, you know, not that I've ever practiced it, and I can see where you would say that a lot of people are really gung ho about it, and they present this as almost an argument, as a counterpoint to people's norm, right? So you're not thinking about what you're eating, you're not thinking about these animals that are dying. You're just doing the thing you're not thinking.
Yeah.
And so I do see that. I'd
I
see
do
how, you know, that is a valid point, but I also see your point too, where, you know, almost anytime you're trying to prove a point in a combative way, it's automatically going to turn people off.
Yeah.
And so, you know, while there is going to probably be some good that comes out of that, because, you know, if you look on the other side of that, where people are just eating meat, you know, you have health problems within that. You
Totally.
know? Heart problems and, you know, clogged arteries and high blood pressure. And so, you know, I guess the middle ground where, you know, not that I'm doing it because I just don't, you know, I eat meat, you know,
Yeah.
and sometimes I don't eat salads, but sometimes I do. You know what I mean? So, you know, I'm not the authority to speak on it, but I can say, being on both sides of it, I see how both sides have a point.
Yeah, so do I.
So at any point, because you said it was for some ethical reasons, did you guys have any issues with, this is an animal that died?
It's funny, personally, I think maybe Posse struggled with it a little bit more because she was always a lot more committed, like 100%. She never wavered. I was like for it, and
But you had eaten before that. I mean,
what do you mean?
Like growing up, you had eaten
Yeah,
meat and stuff. It wasn't anything unnatural to you. You
No.
weren't raised that way.
No, and neither was she, but she had done it longer, and she believed in the ethics of it, fervently. So, but once we were just like it felt like we took the blinders off, and we're like, man, we're like actually experiencing some health issues. Like this is kind of stupid, and if eating this way is maybe going to help us feel better, then we just, at least for me personally, somehow my selfish human minds just skipped right over the ethical component that I used to hold pretty strongly. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just a bit of learning new information and modifying my views of human history. And we got here through evolution, and that
If you think that we could only be 4,000 years old, no dinosaurs.
we're not going to waste any time
All
on
right.
that subject.
Okay, but so we evolved. We
Yeah,
evolved
we evolved eating other animals.
omnivores, right?
Yeah,
So we're
other
technically-
animals and vegetables, and various different foods. And we're still humans, and until somebody can fucking sell me a robot body, which I will totally buy if I can afford it.
You can code your own mind.
I'm not that good, but I wish I could. Anyways, until somebody can do that, then I think I'm gonna go ahead and eat this way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the problems that you were saying that you had health wise, is that was that gone?
They've improved. Not 100%, but definitely a market improvement. And so one big one is actually, we read this book called The Dental Diet. And I forget the name of the author. I'm terrible at remembering the names of authors of books, but it was eye-opening in a sense, and he based a lot of his. I think he encountered the concept of approaching diet in terms and how that affects dental health. He first encountered it from this guy Weston Price, who did research like in the 40s about this stuff, because dental science and the dental profession right now is very much like getting your car fixed. You're like, oh, yep, starters just go out and you fix it, you replace them. Teeth just get cavities and you just grind them and fill them. And Weston A. Price's work and this author of this book of The Dental Diet was like, maybe that's not quite right, Like maybe if we just eat good, then our teeth will take care of themselves. And I remember reading years ago about the toothbrush is a relatively new phenomenon, floss as well. And so it can't be that you have to have toothbrushes and floss to survive. I mean, I know the lifespan was a lot less,
Sure.
say 1,000
It
years
was
ago.
a lot less.
A lot less, let's say 30, 40 years was the standard. But I don't have enough notes or research in front of me to say specifically, but I've encountered information in my life, and I encourage you to verify, of we found preserved to some extent bodies with teeth, of 30-year-old men or women who died for whatever case, and their teeth are perfect, obviously
relative term.
Yeah, well, obviously never brushed or flossed,
Sure.
and yet they had good teeth. And it's like, well, just maybe diet and animals, I never brush my dog's teeth. They're awesome.
However,
sharp and white.
Yes. However, most modern animals, I'm just playing devil's
Yeah,
advocate.
please do.
Most modern animals have a fixed diet, whether it's something that's been packaged, or a lot of people now are making food,
Yeah.
getting raw food, and
That's
making it
true.
from
Like
thing.
pets are not a good example.
Right, and
I
then
agree.
their lifespan is
What about bears? Bears seem
also
to have nice teeth. They don't go to the dentist.
fucking bears. That's your argument. Well, also they're shorter than human beings, I think.
Their lifespan.
Yeah, I would
definitely.
say so. I would say most animals.
I mean, I think like turtles and blue whales are the only
Right.
things
But
that-
turtles and blue whales also fucking live in the ocean, are relatively unbothered. Well, sharks will fucking eat turtles, but what eats blue whales?
I don't know.
When they die, sharks. But while they're alive, I don't think maybe orcas. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Anyhow, my point is, the toothbrush and floss, while relatively new, and again, just
I'm not saying don't floss or brush.
I'm just saying also, logically, we've evolved, and so we didn't use it back then. People's lifespans were shorter. Not saying that there's not a correlation of good teeth, good food and good
diet,
teeth, but also maybe this is something that we evolved to.
But
use
evolution doesn't happen that fast. Like, let's say the toothbrush. Let's really go.
We
out.
actually talked about this before. So before we get into this thing, Danny and I did a podcast a while ago.
Did we talk about this on that? I don't remember a damn
we were
thing.
talking about things from the perspective of evolution, right? And I was trying to articulate the point that characteristics, like if you have a kid and their eyes are a little further apart than you, and this keeps on going, it keeps on going. Like, how far down the line where, like, we're now a fucking hammerhead, how is this not evolution? But we wouldn't see that it is evolution because we're too close to the picture. And so the point that I was trying to make, which I did a terrible job of doing, so we did this podcast, and I was trying to make this point, but we smoked right before, and I don't really ever smoke. I was hanging out with my friend, and he's like, let's do this. I'm going to do this. Would you like to do it? I would like to.
Oh, is it my fault? Is that how it went down? I'm pretty sure it was your weed, man.
Well, it was not mine. So anyhow, we smoked in such a way that we weren't making any sense at all.
I want to listen to it.
We were talking in circles, and that was the last podcast. That was the last podcast I recorded before rebranding and doing the Light of Darkness here.
I hope I don't kill this one
listened to
too.
it. No, this one is going to see the light of day.
Okay.
But I did listen to it, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing podcasts anymore.
But anyways, we were talking about evolution.
So we were talking about evolution, and my
Okay.
point that I was trying to make again was that people's characteristics pass down from one generation to the next. We look at them as like, oh, people look different, the different traits, but are we seeing? And this was the point back then. I don't really care to get into it today, but are we seeing evolution on a smaller scale? But we're too close to the picture to actually see how it affects or it plays out. So that point that I was trying to make is like, you have a daughter, eyes are further apart, whatever, or further out. Maybe we see further in front of us, but we can't see that. It's just like, oh, the eyes are a little buggy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the point
It takes a lot of generations before we're hammerheads.
right, and this was the point that I was trying to make is that if we're still evolving, are we seeing this? Are we seeing any evolution? Are we seeing mutations that we're not actually recognizing because we were still close to it? And again, I don't really care.
Perfectly
to get into
possible, and I don't think I've always been a bit frustrated by the theory of evolution, and that like it just seems a little too contrived. Like, okay, so it's all just natural selection, you know? Like, it just seems like too slow of a process. To
Well,
me.
that's a very simplified way of putting it.
Totally, but I think it was the dental diet book where I encountered the idea of epigenetics, which is a much, for lack of a better phrase, a faster acting like aspect of genetics. You know, like we can actually, if say for example a human, they damage their liver through drinking or drugs, they overdo it, right? And then after that damage has occurred, they have offspring, and then if those offspring do the same thing, like it can really jump down, and it can take multiple generations for the offspring there to kind of get things back to normal, you know. So
Yeah.
Epigenetics provides this process where evolution can act on a little bit shorter time scale. I don't understand it very much at all. Like, I was exposed to it through a book called The Dental Diet, and he didn't go into in-depth detail on it. But I want to look into that one more and see how that explains. And just maybe that could, to your point, suggest that we're evolving a bit and we're getting used to toothbrushes. I don't know.
So to get back to the original point, we're talking about animal-based diets as opposed to plant-based diets. And you're saying at the end of the day that the animal-based diet, in your experience, has provided a better baseline for overall health.
That's my current opinion.
Okay, which may change.
Yeah.
Okay, but you are open to those things.
Yeah, if there's anything we've learned from this, it's that we have to be willing to change our minds if we discover or encounter new ideas. Because we feel like maybe we pushed the vegan thing a little too long. I wish that we had realized some of the things that we did.
Well,
earlier.
if you could, if in a perfect world, how would you go about if you wanted to be a vegan, really converting other people to do it without alienating them?
Yeah, I don't know how you would. That's why I never tried. But that's how I approach a lot of things. I don't remember where I first encountered the quote, but I think it was by the poet Rumi. It was like, when I was young, I wanted to change the world. Now I'm wise, and so I changed myself. So I'm not interested in changing other people anymore. My only approach to life is to change myself.
Sure.
And through that, maybe encourage people to do the same.
Sure.
And maybe change the world through my children. But that's the extent of how I'm trying to change the world.
Okay. So good to know. Good to know. There's a like I said, I've had experience in my time, and I don't adhere to any strict diet, but I've had the very I've been fortunate to see people's passionate opinions on both of those things, and not to to be so diplomatic or whatever, but I do see the point in both of those things.
I still do too, especially the ethical consideration. I mean, it's a valid
So
thing.
I've never decided that I wanted to go vegan, but of the things, I'm fascinated with watching animal behavior, like videos and stuff.
Okay.
One of the things that actually kind of turned me off about the animal food industry is I watched this documentary, and it was years ago, called Earthlings.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you've probably heard it.
Yeah.
You've probably seen it. And so it was just fascinating to see how we respond to human beings respond to animals almost as less than. And so again, at the end of the day, if I eat a burger, it doesn't look like a burger. So it's so abstract. I mean, a burger doesn't look right. It doesn't look like that. It's ground up. It's colored. It's decorated with a bun and with lettuce and tomato, and it's a burger. Like I got that from Burger King. And so you never are looking at this thing that was once a living thing. So again, it's very disconnected.
Yeah.
But to see, and you can go on several sites, you do Reddit, and I'm sure 4chan has that shit, and Live Leak. You can actually see, if you Google
Severe animal cruelty.
right, and how the living conditions for them are they're just not good. You know what I mean?
No, they're horrendous. But to that point, you can choose to not eat at Burger King.
Sure.
Like you can eat animals and put some concerted effort into trying to eat ones that are humanely raised. I know that feels like a bit of a stretch. You're still raising an animal to slaughter it, and I'm not going to try to sugarcoat that and say that it's perfectly okay. But you can raise an animal with a lifestyle that makes sense. And if you're inclined to be a hunter, you can go hunt animals that have lived beautiful lives in the wild. And, boom, end it right there just at the end. They've had a perfect life, and they're grass-fed. They weren't taking any antibiotics,
Sure.
They're a perfectly wild animal with a good life. And in my experience, most hunters appreciate and really understand the nuance of that animal thing more so than most, even vegans. I think a lot of hunters respect animals there's probably some asshole hunters that
Oh, absolutely.
think it's cool,
There's
you know?
there's assholes in
But they're
every
assholes,
demographic.
you know. Like, yeah, it's you can't, just like you shouldn't judge vegans by all the annoying stupid ones, you know. You shouldn't judge hunters by all the idiots either.
Sure.
You got to try to judge people by the best version of that particular thing.
Like Trump supporters. There is a best version of that.
Yeah, even that there's a best version of it.
Sure.
But there's a lot of poor examples of it.
That just goes across the board for human beings.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I did want to talk about one other thing.
Okay.
So throughout this time that you guys have made all these really, I don't want to say spontaneous decisions, but just they go against the social norms, if you will. Most people are not just getting up and leaving life behind to go do it somewhere else. You know, most people like to plan things out. And even the ones that do spontaneous things, I'm going to a weekend trip in Vegas. You know what I mean? I'm going to go on vacation to go backpacking for 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Very rarely do people do something so extreme that it just is life altering. You guys decided at some point to kind of do something very different from the norm of renting or buying a home, especially with 2 kids. Tell me about that. What you decided to do.
I suspect you're talking about our choice to live in a school bus.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Danny Mulvihill and company, Danny, they live in a school bus.
Yeah, it's converted and it's pretty awesome.
So yeah, tell us about that a little bit, man.
Man, so I don't like, people will ask us, you know, like, where'd you get the idea? Why'd you decide to do this? And I don't quite remember where the idea was originally seeded. I have this kind of fuzzy memory of, I think, walking around in Peru, which was like years ago, and seeing a school bus, and we're like, oh yeah, like that's cool. And we're like, and I was like, how do you buy a car in Peru? You know, like, but I remember that's the first memory I have. And then when we moved to Spokane, we bought a house.
So you bought a home.
Yeah, we still own a house in Spokane, but we rent it out. And we would take walks around our block, and there's this church on the corner, and they have like a big green school bus that they use for, I guess, church events or something. And it's kind of cool looking, you know, it's like bright green, and I think they even painted the rims, and it just looked like a big burly bus. And when you get to like look at them up close, you're like, man, there's a lot of room in that thing, you know? And then of course YouTube, we started looking around and we're like, oh my gosh, like people are building really cool homes. And so we got a bit enamored with the idea, and we were just all the time 100% like school bus, you know?
Why not a mobile home?
Like an RV
I mean,
or something?
yeah, something already made.
Yeah, so a couple reasons. Number one, like a quality RV is expensive. Like,
What are we talking here?
I mean, at least 30 grand to try to get like a. We also thought we needed a big one, you know, a lot of room. So to get like a 36-foot, like the bus is, nice RV, I didn't look into it that much, but it's like probably at least 30 grand, and you could easily spend.
I think it's actually more than that.
Yeah. I'm thinking on the low end. Like, I've met a few people with like, my standards have come down a bit, and I met a few people that have some. I'm like, okay, yeah, I think I could rock that, you know, now that I'm not so trying to be so fancy. And so that was part of it, the cost consideration. So whereas an RV can be rather expensive, and they have a lot of problems, you know, they're not built to be lived in full time. They're built to like go out on the weekends or for a few weeks, you know, seasonally.
I thought that they were supposed to be alternatives to
No.
home living.
Well, not RVs, no. Like mobile homes, you know, where you can like pull them by a trailer.
Right.
Like that's
So if it has
designed to-
wheels, it's not a permanent.
No, like I'm talking more like a vehicle, you know, that you can drive around with. So cost was one consideration, and you know, RVs are just kind of so homogenous, and they're not cool. And the school bus like seemed cool, and part of it was we wanted to build a house, maybe even like homestead, you know, like buy land and build like an off-grid cabin and grow our own food and all that. But we just weren't really financially able to like get a piece of land and build the type of house that we wanted at that time.
Sure.
And so the school bus was a way that maybe we could like take a crack at building a home essentially, but you know, it'd come with the frame, and we could just do the inside.
So did you from the church? Did you buy this, or
No.
did you
That was
that was just the
that was just what we
inspiration?
walked by, yeah, and it would, it sparked the renewed the interest, and then another thing that got it going was I went on a hiking trip with my brother in Montana, in Glacier National Park.
Sure.
Or I think we were like right next to it because we didn't want to pay to go into the park, and I remember like on the drive there and the drive back, it was just like you're in these epic, amazing mountains, and every 10 miles it's like, some cool name trailhead, and you're like, and we had just gotten back from this 6 mile hike up to an awesome mountain lake, and then I'm like, every one of these trailheads leads to somewhere amazing, like I could never just come out here for a week and see it all. And that's when I got back from that trip, I was like, babe, we got to do the bus. Like, we got to just travel and check
So it
out
was
the
just
parks. And
really inspired.
so that's when we got like back on it, actually started, putting money together to buy a bus and trying to find one for sale. And then we were go ahead.
Was that difficult?
To find a bus?
Yeah.
A little bit, because Spokane's not a very big town. There's not a lot of buses for sale.
Sure.
And, we didn't know shit about buying a bus or like what's like we watched a couple of YouTube videos about like what to watch out for. And I was like, oh man. Right. So I would always like refresh this Craigslist browser or tab in my browser for this buses in Spokane, and almost was never seeing anything. And then we're going to go to a concert in Seattle. And I was like, oh, I should check and see. Right. And boom, there's like, I found like 4 like cool looking ones. Were like, those would be perfect. And
Yeah.
so we set up a few appointments, and the only one we looked at was the one we bought. Like, we checked it out. It had we wanted flat nose. We wanted cargo underneath already. We wanted a rear engine.
So inside the cab,
Mm-hmm.
it's elevated, and then there's room underneath.
Yeah, so they come with a big cargo area underneath. So
That's cool. So there you have storage in there.
exactly, and that's where we were able to put a lot of like our water tanks, and we had just general storage, and it was perfect. It makes the build a lot easier, in my opinion.
So you guys decide to buy this bus, and so is the bus gutted? Is there anything?
No, it was a school bus. Like,
so there's seats in there.
Yeah.
I mean, so you had to get rid of all that shit.
Yeah, we had to take all the seats out, rip up like all the nasty flooring.
Right, so
we
like
didn't
rubberized?
we didn't have to pull the plywood back. Ours was in really good shape, and so we just left it. But yeah, that rubber stuff.
Sure.
We some people leave the ceiling up, and we pulled all the ceiling panels down, removed all the old insulation, put up like new rigid foam insulation, redid the ceiling, took all the wall panels off, all the old nasty insulation, redid that.
Is there anything that you discovered while stripping a bus that like, oh shit, I did not realize that this was a thing?
I found a condom.
In the bus?
Yeah, like under the back seat. Like, I was like, damn. I don't know
Man,
if this
kids,
is a high
man.
school bus or what. But
Yeah,
somebody's getting down back here, and a lot.
Or maybe it's a church bus.
Well, it said Thurston County School District. So a lot of gum, obviously.
Yeah.
But man, that was about it.
So
else real weird.
nothing crazy.
No hypodermic needles or anything.
So you guys, you got this out, and then do you guys have a plan? And were you knowledgeable mechanically on doing the things that you actually had plans for?
So, like in terms of carpentry and stuff, like
Sure.
I had some experience building things. I never built professionally. Like, I did some concrete work when I was in college, but and I'd always just kind of like built stuff growing up. I'd build my own desks and fix things around the house and that kind of stuff. But never, like, I wasn't a tradesman or anything. But I was pretty confident. I knew I could do it. And in terms of plans, like we drew the layout 100 times, of course, and with little minor adjustments along the way, and still ended up with a final product a little bit different than the way those plans looked. But
So you put this all together. How long was the full thing?
we bought the bus September 24th, 2017.
Uh-huh.
Drove it back to Spokane, and then worked on it almost nonstop. Like, I ended up quitting my full-time job and just doing freelance work while doing the bus. I think I quit my job in November, I think. So, like, just a couple months into the build, I was like, yeah, I hated that job anyway. So I quit that and went all in with my main client I'm still with now. And I just worked our butts off on it, man. Like it was our hobby, it was our job, it was our everything.
It was your home.
Yeah, and we were living in our house at that point still, and it was luckily we had a really long driveway to fit the damn thing. And it took us about 8 months, I think, because when we were getting close to go, we're like trying to get the house rented out. It was like springtime, and May 2nd, I think, we ordered some mattresses for the girls' bunks, and they arrived from Amazon. We're like, oh, let's put them in there. We'll like stay the night in the bus. Mm-hmm. It'll be fun, right? And then that night at jiu-jitsu, I had like probably the worst injury I've ever had. I just got my rib popped out. And I remember driving home on the freeway, and like I was afraid to take a deep breath because I thought I'd pass out. You know, when you're like, and you feel like you're gonna pass out from the pain. I just popped, and it's still kind of out a little bit, but it's not as bad anymore. And I was like, dude, how am I going to work on the bus, you know? And I'm like laying down, like looking it up, and it says it takes 6 weeks to recover from. I was just like, oh, dude, I'm totally screwed us. But anyways, we stayed the night in the bus that night, and then we just never slept in the house again.
So that was the first time.
Yeah, so May 2nd, and then we finished the bus while living in it that month, and our cat lived in the house alone for about 3 weeks.
Just by himself, was paying rent?
She just, I wish. Nah, she just, she wouldn't come out, and then finally we're like, oh, we got to get her, and we had to like watch all these YouTube videos on like how to hold a cat so they can't get you, you know? And I just like got her out to the bus one day, and like we just kept her locked in there for a few days, and then she didn't want to get out. She
Stockholm
just loved
syndrome.
it.
So you, posse, 2 girls, all live in a bus.
Yeah, and a dog and a cat.
And a dog and a cat. The bus is really cool, man. You put solar power in there, so it's self-reliant.
Yeah, we have 600 watts of solar on top. Charge controller that will convert that to charge the batteries. We have 450 amp hours at 12 volt battery bank. Nice 2,000 watt inverter.
So in layman's terms, you have power.
Yeah, we're off grid. It's usually like if we're getting a little bit of sun, we're fine. And we run a residential 110 volt fridge off of it. I just keep the inverter on all time now because our new fridge has a microprocessor, so it can't tell the inverter to turn on, so I just have to leave it on. But back to the layman's terms. Yeah, we're off grid there. We got enough. We have 44 gallons of fresh water and then a 44-gallon gray water tank.
Is that a lot?
We're ultra conservative with it, and we can make it last 7 days to 10 days.
That's everybody doing what they do.
Yeah, but I haven't finished the shower yet.
Okay, so you're making a shower. So you guys have a full bathroom in there.
I mean, by full bathroom, like we have a place to pee and poop, and the shower's like almost done.
Okay.
But yeah, we've lived in a bus for almost a year now, over a year without a shower.
Does it ever get crowded?
Yeah, but I don't know. Like as a family, we all vibe pretty good together. Like
yeah, I mean, you actually like your wife.
Yeah, we totally like each other and love each other, and so like we don't really have we've never been like the type of couple that just needs to get away, you know? So that's cool. And we've just always spent a lot of time with the kids. So that hasn't been an issue, surprisingly. And it's pretty big, you know? Like we actually have a room with a door, you know, that closes. And so if I need to, I can work back there and have it, you know, kind of shut down. And everybody's just used to it. So the space hasn't been an issue, really.
And you guys just have room to operate and stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
So you guys were now that you've moved over all that stuff, your life, are you guys saving a lot of money?
That's a good question. So
because we talked about earlier about how life seems to nickel and dime you at this point, right? It's like you pay for subscription services, you know, the Netflix and Spotify and
Pandora, Prime.
Yeah, and so what they you know, sometimes you can have an affordable place, and like I said, sometimes it's not affordable. But even if it's affordable, then you still have to take into consideration there's a lot of things that you still pay for in addition to that to live the life that you want to live.
Yeah. So Great question. Part of the motivation behind the bus was actually to reduce expenses because you get used to a normal lifestyle with a mortgage or rent and all the bills associated with having a home or an apartment, and it's a lot, and we're like, so you get used to that income, and then it gets to the point where you can't really do a career change where you have to take a huge pay cut because then your lifestyle, it would have to change drastically. And we're like, okay, well, a bus is maybe a cool way to cut our expenses a lot, but it's totally possible to waste a bunch of money living like the RV bus life. Especially if you're trying to stay in RV parks and stuff. And we had we went.
Well, that essentially just becomes you're just renting.
Yeah,
space.
and it costs more than like a house, And
You're paying lot fees.
You can get monthly rates, but like in any city that you actually want to live in, it's gonna still be $1,000 or more. Like if you think you're just gonna get an RV and go live on the beach in San Diego, yeah, you're gonna probably spend $2,000 a month to be in an okay RV park, like.
So so where do you guys park? I mean,
right.
Are you guys living in
so
fucking
luckily,
the Walmart parking lots?
No. And in fact, a lot of cities have passed ordinances where Walmart's not even allowed to let you stay the night. Oh. So BLM land is really where it's at.
What is that?
It stands for Bureau of Land Management. So it's managed land owned by the public, or the national government manages it, but it's public land. And some of it's developed to the point where there's it's not like traditional camping, with like picnic tables and bathrooms all the time. Like it's usually, if there's a bathroom, it's a pit toilet. There might be some picnic tables and some campfire pits and whatnot. But it's, a lot of times it's just, like gravel roads and you just kind of like park and that's it and you chill. It tends to be, pretty far outside of cities. Like there's not a lot of BLM land close to metropolitan areas. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we're kind of like out in the boonies, so to speak, but it's free. You can usually stay up to 14 days anywhere on BLM lands,
which is longer than you plan.
Yeah, we almost never stay that long. The longest we've stayed anywhere was actually in Los Bariles in Baja. We stayed like 3 weeks or a month, but it's not BLM land down there. It's Mexico.
You guys were living in Spokane. You drove down to Mexico?
Yeah, we took kind of a roundabout. Spent a lot of time in Washington, Oregon, Nevada, Arizona, California, then into Baja, Mexico, all the way down to Cabo and back up.
So you probably are saving some money.
Yeah, but it does take, you got to be mindful of how you go about it. Like, you can't be staying in RV parks or you're not going to save any money.
Sure.
Part of why we also don't move super fast. Like a lot of people that do the bus life or the van life thing, they're they're hauling ass though. They're moving across the states quick. They'll put 20,000 miles on in a couple months. We did 9,000 miles in the last 11 months or almost a year. So we're moving at a lot slower pace because our bus gets about 8 miles to the gallon, and
just regular gasoline.
Diesel.
Okay.
And
do you know the size of your gas tank?
I think it's about 80 gallons.
Okay, so yeah. You guys are paying what you're not paying in rental or whatever.
So
you are having to pay some expenses for gas
for fuel. Like fuel's a new expense. Sometimes we gotta pay for dumping water or filling water. Propane is so cheap that and the rate at which we use it's not a problem. So that is hard to consider.
And what do you use the propane for? Gas,
stove. Cooking? Yeah, stove and the hot water heater that will be used for the shower and it's hooked up to the sink, but we just never use it, is propane, and that's it.
Contrast to normal living, pros and cons, man. Like, what's the...
It's all pros all the way down.
Although there's no cons?
I mean, there's cons, man, but for it just works so great for us. We love it. We obviously, based on the story up until this point, we're always
if bus life was veganism and you wanted to convert people, because there's like a small home movement, I think it's tiny home movement.
Totally.
How would you say to people like, this is the thing you should do?
That's an interesting point, because it's something that you can be enthusiastic about and not turn people off. Because I'm not telling you that, even though you're living in an apartment, I'm not telling you that you're doing it wrong. I'm just suggesting like it could be better, like I'm not telling you got to change. I guess it's funny because I'm telling you that all the same things. You got to change. There's a better way. But for some reason, like it's okay for me to be enthusiastic about it, and I
Well, what if
think
you were enthusiastic about your diet? Wouldn't it be the same?
no, because I think it puts people on the defensive, It's like it, I don't know why it's so different.
I don't know.
It's an
One
interesting
could
question.
I'm just saying one could say, "Well, Danny, I'm here because of my circumstances. This is where I have to live right now. I have a kid in a school district. Blah blah blah."
So here's the other thing about like with the vegan versus omnivore diet. Typically the dietary choice that one subscribes to is a lifelong one, right? Like you can't just save up to be vegan, like, but with the bus life thing or with the tiny home thing or any sort of different living arrangement thing, like you could plan that out. You could be like, okay, I do like the sound of that. I'm going to pick a date. I'm going to start saving a little bit of money. Maybe I'm going to look into a way to have some remote work that I could, like, I'm going to prepare myself for that eventuality. And, you can do that. And it's not like you have to, all you're giving up at that point is the thing that you're actually trying to get rid of, which is, the apartment or the home or whatever it is.
So 100% you're behind that.
Yeah, I love it, man. I mean, I guess it's like anything, it's not for everybody.
Sure.
But I don't meet very many people that I don't think it would be amazing for.
Do you think, as far as like lifestyle, it is benefiting you? Is it taking any stress away, or is it adding stress?
Man, yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up because it reminded me of something. Interestingly enough, part of what I think helped influence the choice to do it and what I like about it was this book Tribe by Sebastian Junger. And interestingly, the book is called Tribe, which would suggest it's about like, getting your tribe, your people together. But another part of the book was about daily struggle and how we've sort of managed to remove that from our life, like we just have, like you turn a dial on the thermostat, the temperature stays that, you push a button on the coffee pot, probably preceded by some adding of beans and water and whatnot, but it makes the coffee for you. Our lives are pretty easy. We can just hop in a car and get where we need to be. We may have to suffer through traffic, but we've done a lot to construct lives where we've removed our struggle, a dishwasher, right? Like a remote for a TV. And we've removed so many of these little daily struggle things that I think, man, was it you and I that was talking about this recently, where we get to a point where we're kind of like, you're like, I should be happy. I should be thrilled. My life is great, like there's nothing to complain about. And yet we feel this emptiness. And I think, and I believe this book suggested it as well, that part of that is just that we don't have these little struggles in our life anymore. So with the bus life, like if it's cold, like right now it's a little cold in Spokane and they're just a little cold, like you just put on a hoodie and pull your blankets up a little higher and you deal with it, or you make a fire, and it gets really hot and then it cools back down. Like it's not just a nice consistent temperature. We'll typically make cowboy coffee, which is just like you boil water, throw some scoops of coffee grounds in there, boil it 3 minutes, add cold water and like decant it off. And it's just a little bit more work, but we've reintroduced all these little sort of micro struggles into our life. And it does make you feel like you're working for your day, It's kind of like farming your own food. You're putting the effort in, and I think there's something that maybe not all humans need it, but I think it's working well for us. In addition to how it's improved our life, I don't have to work as much because we don't have to maintain, not like we were ever trying to have an expensive, fancy lifestyle, but we can live on a lot less money. If we really try to buckle down, we can get by for a couple grand, and that's including paying debt that we still have.
Sure.
And so when we can live on less money, I can work a lot less if I want to, which means we can either spend that time together or I can pursue an interest like with some seriousness. And another like perhaps ironic thing is that with that extra time, I have the opportunity to be bored. And I think a lot of creativity and self-discovery comes from boredom. When you have nothing better to do than to just sit and think, that tends to be, at least when I experience insights, when
Yeah.
and so
Well,
those are just a couple
there's
examples.
a lot to be said about daydreaming. When people are like psychologically well, it's because you have time to kind of drift off and be creative, and
Yeah.
a lot of I guess research suggests that that's an important part of the human experience is actually just being able to sit still and just kind of letting your mind roam. But we kind of take that out of the equation. You said earlier that life is kind of easy. Like I can argue that point a little bit because what I would go one step further. It's not that I think that life is easy. I think that we're accustomed to living a certain way, and in order to live that particular way, certain things have to be done. The struggle comes from not having the resources to do those things.
Yeah.
And so that's where life gets hard, right? It's like we're used to like having our home. We want to live in this place with air conditioning, which you mentioned. We have to go to work to make that happen. We have to, and so we get stuck doing these things. And so while I see your point, I just wanted to clarify. Like I think that life it's difficult, but not because it's without struggle. I just think that we all have importance. We all place importance in different things, and so I think that it's still difficult. But I think we're just accustomed to, again, like our diet.
Yeah.
What's
Well,
the
and to
easiest
your
thing to
point,
do?
like we move the struggle, instead of like making the struggle making a fire in a wood stove. The struggle is maybe going to a job that we don't like or even like, and producing income so that we can pay our electric or utility bill.
Correct.
So we move the struggle around. And I think one thing that at least I personally like, and I feel like this different type of daily struggle can be more functional, is it's immediate. Like the struggle and the result are so close to one another.
Right.
Whereas you don't really think about your utility bill until
The end
it's
of the
in
month.
front of you or it's late and you're like, damn it, or and so that distance between the two, I think, causes
Correct.
us a lot of animosity.
Yeah, we are living for a lot of abstract ideas, and I think that's for a lot of people. So we struggle because you get the sense of we're not doing enough or we're not happy, and it's because a lot of it revolves around ideas that we can't actually touch, that we don't know if we're changing or making a difference until much later. And there's always going to be, like, you go back to the hunter, right? It's a satisfying thing to get the food or to get the kill, if you will, because you see it, right? There's a direct result of your action. And our daily lives now are kind of just they're not directly correlated. It's offset, right?
Yeah.
And so
that's exactly what I'm saying. I agree.
So I can see your point, man.
Another point that I remembered about the bus life that works for us, and this is interesting and unexpected. One thing that we were concerned about, even when we, the whole time we ate a certain way, we believed that it was the right way. We've always been like, we're doing the right things for our health. Like, we want to live to be old and healthy. But one thing that we always have kind of felt like we're missing was that if you look at societies that tend to have a lot of octogenarians, like longevity is sort of built into the culture, another common thread is that they have community and deep friendships and relationships with family, people helping each other out, and like just interacting with a lot of other humans, like at least a good 10 to 20 different people that they know care about them, and vice versa, right? And that we've always sort of struggled with that. Like and I think in some ways, like our dietary choice got in the way of making friends, because a lot of times, like, you break bread with people,
Sure.
And when you can't break the same bread, it's like it kind of gets in the way of that relationship building. And so, like, you're one of the best friends we've made in all the different cities we've lived in, that we still, are really, really stoked to know. And even like when we lived in Spokane, you know, like we made a couple of friends, but you know, I'm not trying to stay in touch with them. And we were like, man, is it gonna get even worse when we live in a bus? You know, like we're gonna really have trouble. And the total flip has happened. We've probably made friendships with at least 6 to 10 people, like that I'll probably know the rest of my life in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more than we've made in the last 10 years, you know, like, but it's interesting, you know, like you just, I wrote about this one time in the blog, like, why is that? And it seems to me like when I have a neighbor, you know, like there's a lot of pressure to get along, you know, and which means I might reserve parts of my personality until I know what they're like. And then by the time we know each other, I may have held a little bit back. I'm like, oh, they might not like that about me.
I'm just
you know,
not going to
or whatever.
release
Yeah.
that. Right.
And so I don't actually get to be me, and the friendship doesn't deepen, and blah, 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 blah. But when you're meeting people in our lifestyle now, it's like, if you don't like me, then I'll fucking see you later. I don't care, because we're going our separate ways.
Sure.
But if you do get along, then like, well, let's drive the same direction and hang out at the next spot, you know? And we met a lot of really cool people that I'd considered close friends, just like I consider you a friend, you know? And that's been unexpected and super awesome.
So, in closing,
Yeah.
Bus life, man. And people can follow kind of your adventures on this stuff.
Yeah, we you know, we're not as active on social media as we were initially, there's a lot of accounts that are super active. So if you really like social media, definitely follow the Bus Code.
So yeah, we're thebuscode.com, right?
Yeah, so that's the website, the blog. I intend to develop it some more. I've got like 4 articles on there, or 4 blog posts, and I think the Instagram's linked to it. And I'm working on a little bit of maps so you can kind of see where we've gone and whatnot. But if there's any one thing that we'd share, I'd say thebuscode.com is probably going to become the place to see a lot more of what we're doing. We have the Instagram and the Facebook, but we kind of took a challenge in March to be like, let's not use social media for a month and just see how it goes. And at the end of the month, we're like, that was actually fucking great. Let's keep doing it.
Yeah, a lot of people.
And so we're just kind of been like,
distraction.
Yeah, and so we haven't been using it much, but there's still a bunch of pictures there. And
yeah, so if you want to check it out, you guys can go to facebook.com /thebuscode or instagram.com/thebuscode. / Oh shit! Sorry, you can't fuck around and say the wrong thing for the coding. Dude, you want to give anybody a shout out, man, while we're here?
Whew, boy. I mean, I guess I'll shout out my jiu-jitsu homies in Spokane. I mean, Marcelo Alonso up in Seattle, that's the man. Spokane Valley Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and you know, Adam, my brother, all the crew there, Brady, man, all our fighters there. We got a good crew. I've talked a lot about my family already, so you know, shout out to them. But
hello, guys. Well, I think we'll kind of wrap it up at that point. Cool. I want to say thank you to Darkland Fight Lab for sponsoring this podcast, number 8. Again, like we said, we're going to continue to try to bring you guys quality content. If you guys have any questions, comments, if you guys want to talk shit, thebuscode.com.
Yeah, do it.
Now, you can hit me up at thelightofdarkness.com. We have now, obviously, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We are on YouTube now, iTunes, and Spotify. Did I say iTunes, Spotify?
Yep.
So we're all over the place. My personal Twitter, which for some reason nobody fucking follows in Twitter unless you're a celebrity, but you can get that out there. DG the Darkness, that's on Twitter. That's on Instagram. I'll put links up in the show notes. Thelightofdarkness.com. Did I mention darklandfightlab.com, our sponsor?
Only like 3 times, so maybe let's talk about it again. Darkland Fight Lab.
Check that shit out. But I think that's going to be all of it for now. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you guys are now moving all your shit to a bus. Don't be scared.
Do it.
And I just want to say thank you to Danny Mulvihill for coming and gracing the podcast with cool stories. We'll see you guys soon again. If you guys have anything that you guys want to say, holla at your boy. And that'll be that.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye, motherfuckers.